Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story. So, before I head into my thoughts and feelings on Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story, I'm most likely going to have some spoilers in this video. That being said, I don't think I'm going to have any spoilers in regard to like the main Bridgerton show whatsoever. I don't think there's really any need to talk about the main Bridgerton show, I don't think. But yeah, as far as this show goes, most likely some spoilers. So if you have not caught up on this entire season of Queen Charlotte, you have been warned. So yeah, Queen Charlotte, what's this show about? It's a prequel to the very popular Bridgerton TV show, but this time we're focusing on a very young Queen Charlotte, who we see as a much more older woman in the other show. And yeah, this entire show is focusing on her as a young woman and how she comes to the English court and her marriage to King George III, and yeah, her struggles within the English court and with her mother-in-law and all that good stuff that we love when it comes to historical period dramas. We love the court drama, the court politics, don't we? So yeah, Queen Charlotte. Let me be real with y'all. When I first heard there was going to be a prequel show focusing on Queen Charlotte, I was like, why? I was like, why do we need it? It's not necessary. And the thing is, now that I have watched the entire show, I am very glad we got this prequel. Seriously, I was very pleasantly surprised. I went into it kind of thinking, don't get myself overly hyped about it. It's probably not going to be good. I genuinely thought this was not going to be any good. And let me tell you all, I don't know if this is too bold of a statement. I think I might like this more so than the main Bridgerton show. Shock, gasp, I don't know. I honestly don't know how others feel about it. I'm very curious how others feel about it in relation to the main Bridgerton show. And the thing is, I freaking really like the main Bridgerton show. Is there absolutely no historical accuracy going on in either of these things? Hell no. But it's still the thing that I just love these types of shows for whatever reason. You know, despite them not having any sort of accuracy, sometimes the costuming is just way too flamboyant, the makeup, the hair, you know, sometimes nothing is accurate to the time period. And yeah, Bridgerton and this show, they play very fast and loose with history. And I guess let's kind of start there with the historical accuracy of this show, because for the most part, Bridgerton, that is just kind of its own whole made up thing, you know. And you have like the older Queen Charlotte there as a historical figure, but yeah, that's kind of its own thing that it's just playing within the Regency era. So this Queen Charlotte show is definitely playing more with actual history, but yeah, like I said, playing much more fast and loose with it. So yeah, don't head into this show expecting this to be the absolute gospel truth when it comes to the story of Queen Charlotte. This show, it definitely has those kernels of historical truth in there, you know what I mean? It definitely has stuff in there that is accurate to some degree, but of course, this is a show that's trying to play for modern audiences. It's kind of rearranging things, changing things, to relate to a modern audience and make it much more fun and enjoyable. But yeah, I mean, you do have, like I said, you do have those kernels of historical truth in there, especially like with the madness of King George III. That was a real thing. He was really mad, King George III. So I mean, there's definitely that, and this show is kind of playing around with kind of the what ifs of what was wrong with him, you know, because I think there's still not 100% certainty what was actually wrong with King George III. And yeah, I think there is kernels of historical truth in there with, like, in regards to their relationship, that it was a little fraught at first and she was struggling with her mother-in-law, Princess Augusta. And yeah, at the very start of this show, something that this show kind of really quickly brushed over, and I wish they had kind of gone into it a little bit more, was the death of Princess Charlotte. We see that pretty much at the very beginning of the very first episode, where we see an older Queen Charlotte, and we see her and the Prince Regent mourning the loss of Princess Charlotte. At the time, Princess Charlotte was essentially going to kind of be like the heir. You know, she was essentially going to be the heir before everybody else. There was no other heirs, really. So her death was a shock during this time period. She was incredibly popular. A lot of times when I've seen stuff about Princess Charlotte, a lot of times she's often referred to as like the Princess Diana of her day. So her death was a massive blow and a massive shock to the English monarchy and to kind of the order of the line of succession and whatnot. So there's definitely that historical truth presented in there, though it's very kind of quick and they don't really make too terribly much out of it. And that's why, as you do get to the very end of this show, as Queen Charlotte, the older Queen Charlotte, is constantly reprimanding her children and pushing them to get married, and she wants heirs. She's so obsessed with heirs. And yeah, the big deal that someone is pregnant by the very end, which is supposed to be the future Queen Victoria. Yes. Yes, that was straight up just fan service, I think, right there near the end. Because yeah, if you know your English monarchy, you know that's Queen Victoria, you know. But I was like, oh yeah, I was stupidly excited about the unborn Queen Victoria, because I knew that's who it was. So yeah, don't go into the show expecting absolute truth, you know, historical truth. Just go with it, be lively with it, have fun, be engaged with it, and yeah, do your own research is what I recommend. You know, definitely do your historical research and kind of look and see what is fact and what is fiction, what the show is kind of taking little bits of kernels from, and what they're kind of rearranging, you know. Because yeah, at the end of the day, this show it's just period drama fluff, you know. And a lot of times, like I said, I just love that sort of thing. I love period drama fluff. Even if there's no truth to it, I just love this sort of thing, kind of during this time period and whatnot. And yeah, if you're kind of like me and that's your sort of thing, then yeah, this is most likely going to be right up your alley, your cup of tea. And yeah, if you already really highly enjoy the Bridgerton show, I don't see why you would dislike this show, to be quite honest. It's pretty much the exact same thing, but better, I think. Seriously, I am not joking. I honestly, genuinely think this was way better than the original show, and the original show is already pretty great in my opinion. I guess the best way to look at this show is like an alternative history. You know, I think that's the best way to view it, because and when I was writing my notes trying to talk about this video, I was like, how would I describe a show like this and a show like Bridgerton? I think the best word choices would be alternative history, or maybe even possibly alternative history fantasy of a degree, because yeah, I mean, a big thing that's made a big deal out of in this particular season of Queen Charlotte is definitely the Great Experiment, as they call it, which from my understanding, it was essentially trying to merge the various different races together, because as we know, with the original Bridgerton show, it's very diverse and colorful with its cast. And the original Bridgerton show really kind of just pushes that to the side about, hey, why are they so diverse, you know? Because I think in the very first season, I want to say Lady Danbury mentions very quickly to a character, hey, because of Queen Charlotte and her marriage to King George and blah, 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 this is how we are a diverse society. You know, it's brought up very, very quickly and kind of never brought up again after that. So this show is almost kind of like a prequel to that. How do they get that very diverse society, you know? So once again, this is, like I said, I would consider this like an alternative history, because this Great Experiment was nothing that actually happened. It's straight up a fantasy, you know. I think what we would like history to have been, you know, but in reality it wasn't like that. People were very much segregated, you know. So yeah, think of the show as alternative history, I think, is the best approach, and just have fun with it. Something in particular that I enjoyed about this show, even though it definitely still had a lot of levity and humor and comedy, there was seriously a great amount of great, wonderful comedy going on in this show. I actually did find it to be much more serious in tone on occasion, quite a bit more different from the original Bridgerton show. I think that's what appealed to me so much about Queen Charlotte, was the slightly darker tone, because once again, this show is tackling a lot of, I think, darker, deeper issues than the main show tackles. This was tackling the Great Experiment, like I said, integrating the races and whatnot. It was tackling that, and the characters struggling, the characters who are of color, struggling with that and just wanting to be seen and heard and fit in. It was also dealing with, like, women's issues in general. You know, during this time period, women didn't have a voice, they didn't have rights. Everything that they had essentially went to their husbands, and we especially see that with, like, Lady Danbury. When her husband dies, she really struggles with, hey, I need to keep my title. It could be taken away from me. You know, I need this title for my son. It is rightfully his, but as a woman, it's not coming to me, you know? So it's dealing a lot with, like, that, with women's issues during the time period, that women were essentially just thought of as property, you know? And then, yeah, even in Queen Charlotte's situation, her getting married, and she's just seen as something to breed the next monarch, you know? And so she struggles with that initially. That's all she's there, is to look pretty and be a trophy, essentially, and to produce the next heir of England, and keep producing heir and the spare, all the various different spares, because, yeah, during this time period, all your children can just rapidly die off. And another bigger issue that this show was tackling was also the whole thing of, you know, King George III's illness, his mental illness, whatever kind of possibly was at this time period. I think it really tackled his mental illness quite wonderfully, because there was some really dark moments in this show, and just some moments that were genuinely very kind of upsetting and sad, and just really tugging at you. And I love that chemistry between Charlotte and George, and her really, especially near the end, coming to his aid and to his support, and being his stable rock to some degree when he was struggling. So I think it dealt really well with the mental illness sections of Mad King George III. So just going down kind of some of the big plots and some of the main characters and whatnot, I guess, starting with obviously Queen Charlotte and King George III. Once again, let me repeat, I love their chemistry. I thought they hit it off wonderfully well. And the thing is, they don't really spend a hell of a lot of time together when you think about it, especially in the first half of the season, I think. A lot of times they are very much separate. They don't spend a lot of time with each other. And yeah, when they do finally get together, it's like it still clicks, you know? Any of the few scenes that they do have, especially in that first half, it works, it clicks, I think. You definitely understand Queen Charlotte's frustration with why is he kind of, in her eyes, what looks like he's ignoring her and pushing her to the side. You know, you understand kind of her point of view, like, hey, I was brought here against my will. I just want to do my duty. Let's get it over with. But yet you're pushing me away. How can I do my duty? In the meantime, your mother is getting on my last nerves, you know? And then, yeah, it's like you totally understand George's perspective and point of view, where he's coming from, because he's doing everything in his power to cover up his illness. He doesn't want people to see what's wrong with him, because it would be a sign of weakness within the monarchy, which is definitely something which is what Princess Augusta is really trying to avoid, because she's constantly trying to, you know, all of the ministers and the Privy Council or whatever, you know, all those people, she's constantly trying to kind of get them all away so they don't see what is truly wrong with her son and whatnot. I truly loved George and Charlotte, all of their scenes together. I thought they had wonderful, great chemistry together, very sexy. And yeah, I like that this show didn't resort to a bunch of nudity, because I feel like Bridgerton has quite a bit of nudity, if I'm remembering correctly. And, you know, sometimes we all love a little bit of nudity. It's fine. But, you know, sometimes, you know, less is more, you know? And I think this show did a good job of, you know, not having rear ends all over the place or Charlotte's chest all over the place. You know, this show worked with just the tighter, closer intimacy that was going on between them, that was, I think, much more appealing and sexy at times. I also really loved Lady Danbury's story, Lady Agatha Danbury. Let's give her rightful title, Lady Agatha Danbury. I was really pleasantly surprised with her story because in the original show, I wouldn't say she's one of my top favorite characters. I always kind of latch onto whatever the main Bridgerton couple is, and Lady Danbury, it's like I always like her, but I wouldn't consider her a top favorite character. But boy, oh boy, this show, I freaking loved Lady Danbury, and this, oh my god, she had just such a rich, complex story. Like I was mentioning earlier, the whole thing with the great experiment going on, and then her husband dies fairly early in the show, and yeah, she's in an absolutely loveless marriage. Yeah, the sex scenes between her and her husband, the actress did such a great job because she's just in there staring up at the ceiling like, oh, is it almost over? So I loved her story, and yeah, then the additional complexity, once Lord Ledger, who is Violet's father, you guys, the scandal, oh my god. Yeah, once Lord Ledger gets into the picture, I love that complexity, because it's like, even though he's a married man, it's like I was still thinking, well, damn, I ship him and Lady Danbury together because his wife just seems completely terrible, and he's in a loveless marriage with her, it seems. And it's like Lady Danbury and Lord Ledger really need to be the ones together, I loved that whole complexity. Oh my god, the birthday hats. Don't get me started on the birthday hats. And then you have Violet, and she realizes that connection at some point with the birthday hats. She realizes that, like, oh, did my father have an affair with Lady Danbury? Oh my god. And yeah, Violet kind of feeling that hurt and betrayal initially, I think, and kind of having to move on from that, like, hey, y'all had some sort of happiness, and yeah, I liked Violet's involvement in this season as well. In the flashbacks, she was like a little girl. She was so cute. And then yeah, her relationship, the older versions of them with like Lady Danbury. I really like the Violet and Lady Danbury relationship because I don't think that's really explored too often on the original show. Okay, I gotta talk about Reynolds and Brimsley. Dear freaking God. Raise your hand if Reynolds and Brimsley kind of stole the show for you. Yes, I was here for Reynolds and Brimsley. My God, I didn't expect to get invested into them as much as I did because I was thinking, oh, they're just going to be kind of minor supporting characters. But in reality, they actually had a pretty good hefty chunk of plot going on. If you think about it, Reynolds and Brimsley, whenever Charlotte and George were on screen, for the most part, Reynolds and Brimsley were always there in the background and always having looks and sharing looks with each other, They were definitely a main central couple in this as well, and I loved the time spent on Reynolds and Brimsley. I fell hard for the two of them. They were just so cute, so sweet. I love the complexity there as well because they both work in service of their individual person. Reynolds for George and Brimsley for Charlotte, obviously. They work in the service of those people that they work for, and it's their job to do what they can for their individual person, and I love that complexity that when Reynolds and Brimsley, they would kind of get in heated arguments like, hey, you need to tell your person this. Well then, hey, you need to tell your person this, So I love that complexity, and yeah, the two of them, always making up with one another, and it's like they had to kind of have those shared moments with each other in private because obviously they can't do anything publicly. They had to have those private moments whenever George and Charlotte would finally get together, So yeah, Reynolds and Brimsley, absolutely wonderful. They stole the show for me, and yeah, at the very last episode, yeah, they were sitting there out kind of in the woods. They were just sitting there dancing to the music because I can't do that in public, obviously. And then Brimsley, the older Brimsley, was kind of dancing to himself there near the end, and it's like, well, where the hell is Reynolds? Dear God, is Reynolds dead? And I was mentioning this earlier about how wonderfully done the comedy is on this show. I think some of the best comedic moments were with the older Charlotte, with all of her many children and their wives. That was great. I love that. Anytime Charlotte and the kids, her full-grown kids were on screen, it was always a highlight and always a joy because I just loved how she just constantly reprimand them, yell at them, because I mean you get the idea that from the very get-go, Charlotte, her sole function in life has been to produce children, to produce the heir. And even into her older age, she is still constantly thinking about that. You know, everything she has done is for the crown. And, you know, as much as she hated Princess Augusta, the older Queen Charlotte has very much kind of turned into Princess Augusta when you think about it. Princess Augusta's sole mission in life was to produce children and to protect the crown at all costs, and Queen Charlotte is doing that. That's why she is constantly yelling at her kids like, hey, I need grandchildren, I need an heir, where are they, you idiots? So I mean, it's sad and unfortunate, you know, kind of during this time period, you know, that was kind of the women, that was kind of their sole function, was to serve the crown and produce children. And yeah, if there's no heirs, you know, the line it's in trouble. You know, your family is in trouble, because then what function do you serve, you know, if there's no heir? So I loved kind of that back and forth family drama, if you will. And as I already mentioned, the quick little tease of the unborn Queen Victoria, hell yes, I was living for it. And I do gotta highlight the very final scene of this show, which it kept showing like the older Charlotte and the older George, and then like the younger Charlotte, the younger George. It was wonderfully edited here with them like under the bed, because that was like George's safe place, under the bed. And yeah, Queen Charlotte, young and old, getting under that bed with him. You know, this is a queen. But yeah, she is stooping down and getting under that bed with her husband, who needs her support and needs her help. Woo! And then yeah, he says to her, you didn't go over the wall. And then she says something like, no, I didn't go over the wall. You guys, I had to pull out a tissue. Let me be real with you. I had to pause. There was literally maybe like 10 seconds of the show left. I had to pause, grab a tissue, and cry my eyes out after the no, I didn't go over the wall line. Whew, that was wonderful. So, a question as we close out this video: is another season of this show necessary? I almost don't really think another season is necessary. I honestly think this could stand alone as its own season. You know, like if Bridgerton wanted to do like kind of an anthology series, if you will, and just kind of have these mini seasons that focus on just a random character, because they don't have enough time to focus on them in the main Bridgerton story, you know? And yeah, this prequel was a great way to show more of Queen Charlotte. You know, Queen Charlotte, we never really get a good sense of her in the other show. She's just kind of a lot of times there for comedic effect, you know, with her nice, wonderful, witty one-liners, reprimanding everybody, you know? So yeah, this show was a nice way to show us the real Queen Charlotte, and yeah, the struggle with her husband, you know, because it was a big deal during this time period, you know. People were very much rightfully concerned about their monarch, like, are we in trouble, you know? So yeah, I don't really think another season is necessary. If the show decides to do another season, I would be totally fine with it, because this show didn't even touch on like the American Revolutionary War, for instance. I think it kind of briefly touched on it, so I would imagine another show would kind of maybe possibly get more into that, you know, with England's involvement with the American Revolutionary War, you know. But we shall see. So yeah, you guys, how did y'all feel about this season or mini-series, I'm not quite sure what to call it, of Queen Charlotte, A Bridgerton Story? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What were some highs and lows for you? Like I said, I honestly and truly enjoyed this, and I think I prefer it over the main Bridgerton show. That's how much I liked it. I know other people may not feel the same, but you can let me know. So yeah, just let me know your thoughts and opinions. Have a conversation with me. Feel free to go into spoilers. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye, guys.